All right, let's dive right in and unpack one of the world's most dangerous and long-running rivalries, the conflict between India and Pakistan. And look, this isn't just some regional dispute. We're talking about a nuclear flashpoint that honestly has the entire world holding its breath. And this is not some new thing. We're talking about more than 75 years. For over three-quarters of a century, this relationship has been defined by one thing, really. A deep-seated mistrust that fuels territorial disputes and conflict that just keeps coming back again and again. In all that time, how bad has it gotten? Well, this rivalry has exploded into four major declared wars. These weren't just border skirmishes. These were brutal, full-scale conflicts that have shaped the very identities of both nations and just hardened the hostility between them.
But what makes this conflict so incredibly perilous today? It really comes down to this number, roughly 350. That's the estimated combined nuclear arsenal of both countries. And with that, the stakes are no longer just regional, they're global. So the big question is, how on earth did we get here?
Well, to understand that, you have to go all the way back to the very beginning, a beginning that was so violent, so chaotic, that it essentially embedded conflict right into the DNA of these two states from day one.
So picture this. It's 1947. British India is partitioned, creating two brand new nations. It was a monumental, historic moment for sure, but it was also a human catastrophe on an almost unimaginable scale. It set off one of the largest mass migrations in human history. Somewhere between 12 and 20 million people were uprooted from their homes, and the violence that erupted was just horrific, costing up to 2 million lives. This shared trauma, this brutal birth, became the very bedrock of the entire relationship, a foundation of mistrust that you can still feel today.
And this is where things get really complicated, because right from the start there was this core contradiction that poisoned everything. Let's look at two princely states. First, Junagadh. It had a Muslim ruler but a Hindu majority population. India's logic? Simple, let the people decide. Popular will. But then you have Kashmir. Hindu ruler, but a Muslim majority. So what was India's logic there? Suddenly, it wasn't about the people's will at all. It was all about the ruler's signature on a legal document. See the problem? This complete reversal of logic guaranteed that Kashmir would become the central, unsolvable wound of the rivalry.
So, for decades, before nuclear weapons really entered the picture, this fundamental clash played out the old-fashioned way, on the battlefield, in a series of conventional, all-out wars.
The first few wars really set the pattern. The war in '47 literally carved Kashmir in two, creating the ceasefire line. Then the '65 war over that same land basically ended in a draw. But 1971, that one was different. India won a decisive victory, a victory so total it led to the creation of a whole new country, Bangladesh, out of what had been East Pakistan. This permanently shifted the balance of power and left Pakistan with this deep, lasting sense of strategic vulnerability.
And that feeling of vulnerability is so important because what came next changed the entire game. We're talking about a real point of no return, a moment when the rivalry entered a new and far, far more dangerous phase.
That moment was 1998. In quick succession, both India and Pakistan conduct public nuclear tests. They officially announced to the world, "We are nuclear-armed states." And from that moment on, all the old rules of war and conflict between them were basically thrown out the window.
This created a strange new dynamic that strategists called the nuclear ceiling. Now, this is a super important concept. The idea is that the fear of a full-blown nuclear exchange is so terrifying, so final, that it prevents either side from launching a massive conventional war. There's a ceiling on how far things can go. But here's the paradox. This so-called safety net actually encourages smaller conflicts. It creates this bizarrely safe space for proxy wars, border skirmishes, and terrorist attacks to happen right underneath that ceiling, just below the threshold of total war.
So what does this new kind of conflict actually look like? Well, it's a dangerous landscape of limited strikes, of plausible deniability, and of constant nerve-wracking brinksmanship. This quote just perfectly captures the dangerous new reality. The nuclear ceiling simultaneously prohibits full-scale conventional warfare while promoting a persistent state of hybrid conflict. Just think about that for a second. The ultimate weapon, the thing that's supposed to end all wars, doesn't bring peace. It just creates a permanent simmering state of near war.
And it gets even more dangerous when you look at their actual war plans. India has a doctrine called cold start. It's basically a plan for a lightning-fast, limited conventional attack to punish Pakistan. In response, Pakistan has a terrifying first-use policy. They've essentially said, if we see Indian forces crossing our border in a major way, we reserve the right to use small, tactical nuclear weapons on the battlefield to stop them. And this is the absolute core of the danger. India's plan to fight a conventional war might be the very thing that triggers Pakistan to start a nuclear one.
So over the years, this has created a predictable and really terrifying escalation ladder. It usually starts with a major terrorist attack. Then, India feels public pressure to respond, so it launches some kind of limited military strike. After that, Pakistan, to maintain its own credibility, feels like it has no choice but to respond in a similar way. Each step takes them one rung higher up that ladder, and everyone knows what's at the top.
Now, beyond all the military risk, this state of perpetual conflict comes at a huge, tangible cost for hundreds of millions of ordinary people.
Just think about this number. Before things got really bad recently, the annual trade between these two massive neighboring economies was just over $1 billion. To put that into perspective for you, that's less than what Americans spend on Halloween candy. It's a figure that just screams of wasted potential.
And this really puts it into perspective. Look at that tiny little sliver of actual trade compared to the massive unrealized potential. It's not just an opportunity cost, it's like a self-imposed economic sanction that has hobbled an entire region for decades. And all the while, the direct costs from instability and crises just keep piling up.
So let's just quickly bring it all together. What we have is a rivalry that was born from the chaos and trauma of partition. It's now trapped under this nuclear ceiling that stops a final all-out war, but pretty much guarantees endless smaller ones. Both sides have these clashing war plans that push them to the brink, creating this terrifyingly fragile stability. And all of it comes at a staggering economic and human cost that holds back an entire region.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling question. In a rivalry where both sides have shown again and again that they're willing to take huge risks and push things right to the edge, how long can this perilous balance really last? Is a fatal miscalculation just a possibility, or at this point, is it inevitable?
Subscribe now for more conflict breakdowns.